Hi, in this video I'll show you how to create an animated scatter chart. Each circle represents a different country. As the years tick away in the top right corner, the circles respond to that and are animated. The x-axis represent the average life expectancy and the y-axis represent the average fertility. When the chart initially is animated, all the circles, that is all the countries, are clustered around the top left corner, indicating that the life expectancy in the early years was low and the average fertility rate was quite high. As the years tick away, the life expectancy is increased, so the circles move to the bottom right corner, indicating the life expectancy has increased over the years, whereas the average fertility rate has fallen. The circle size is proportional to the population. So as the graph is animated, we see the circle size also increasing for some countries in proportion to the increase in the population. So as we'll notice, there are multiple dimensions in this chart, starting with the fertility rate, the average life expectancy, the population, as well as the years. And I think the fifth dimension is different countries are represented by different colors. So I'll show you how to create this with D3 and JavaScript. We'll also add a few other functionalities to the graph. An ability to be able to select a country or a group of countries and run the animation just on those selected countries. We'll also add a trail feature to the animation, so we can click a particular country and can actually see the trail that the circle has left behind. Such kind of scatter plot animation is quite easy to create using a business intelligence software like Tableau. And the reason for me showing you this is the concepts we use to create it in a BI suite is exactly the same kind of concepts we'll use to create it using D3 and JavaScript. That is loading the data, creating the X's, using ear to animate the scatter chart, using the trail feature, and the BI softwares have a whole range of other features that are automatically at your disposal. Let's take a quick look at the data. So we have three CSVs: the fertility, life expectancy, and country population. In each CSV, we have a country name, country code, and the year starting from 1960 onwards. So we'll create a few functionalities: scatter chart, the animation, we'll create a replay function, creating path, and then ability to filter by country. So let's plan the code. We'll first create a process sheets function. We'll import all the three CSVs within the function and add it to an array. We'll then create a draw axis function. We'll create the x-axis and the y-axis within this function. We'll then create a draw function, and within it an update function to create the circles and animate the circles. We'll then create a draw paths function. The draw paths function will serve two purposes. One is to help us create the paths or the trails using an update function within it. And this is the trails that we saw previously. And the second thing it'll help us accomplish is we'll create another function called the update annotation function to help us update the annotation or the text annotations within the animation. We'll start with two empty files, index.html and main.js. So in the index.html, let's just write the boilerplate. In the body element, we'll create a div. This will hold the chart and give it an ID of chart1. We'll create another div and we'll add two buttons to that. One is the replay button to replay the animation, and the second button will be the animate button to allow us, or the filter button to allow us to select a country or a group of countries and run the animation just on that. We'll also add a pop-up. This will contain the list of the countries. We'll just give it a title, and then we'll just go ahead and add a bunch of styles to it. So I think we are done here. The replay and the filter button are placed. So we'll go back to the main.js, add a bunch of variables. Sample1, sample2, and sample3 will hold the three different CSVs and the data array. We'll give our chart some dimensions, and then we'll add the SVG element. The point is not to run through each line of code, but if you're already familiar with D3, just to give you a conceptual understanding as to how to put a complicated animation like this together using the tools that you're already familiar with. So we'll create the first function, process sheets. In this function, we'll import the 3 CSVs. And we'll use fetch to read one CSV at a time. And once we are done with reading the CSVs, we are saving the data into sample 1, 2, and 3. And if I just show you how the data looks at the moment, so I'll just console the sample 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so there's an error. Okay, yep. So we'll just comment this out. Okay, so the 3 CSVs have been read into these 3 different variables. And if we look at the sample 1, so we've pretty much read the CSVs as is. Now, this is not very useful for us. What's better for us is if we can put it into a format, into an array where we can actually pass it on to the data method of the D3 to be able to create those circles and paths, etc. So at the moment we have read the data, but it's really not that useful to us. So that is why what we're going to do is we're going to add these 3 variable data into a single array called data. And I'll show you how to do that. So we'll just iterate over each variable, sample 1, 2, and 3, and read the data and push the data into the data array. And that's what I'm doing. I'm pushing the country into from element 0, code from element 1, and I'm creating 3 objects, life, population, and life expectancy, and I'm adding the each year's data. If you're just wondering where 1, 2, and 3 elements are coming from, so if we open the sample 1, for example, so that's how I'm reading. 0 means country, 1 means code, and 2, 3, and so means the years. So I'll finish this. I'll add each year's data. It's a little laborious, but we'll see how easy it is then to just use this data array for all the elements that we need to create. And if I now show you how the data array looks, so let me just console that. And all our data is now part of this one data array. So we have the code, we have the country, we have all the fertility data sitting within the same object, and the life and the population data. So everything sits within a single array, and each element of the array represents a country, and all the country data sits within that element itself. So everything is in one place. Will make our life much easier. Okay, so now we'll focus on the draw axis function. So we'll just use the dot then to keep adding more functionality. So now we'll create the axis, we'll pass the data, and we'll create the scale X to represent the population or the average age, and the scale Y to represent the fertility, average fertility in the country. And the scales are done, and then we'll use dot then to now add those countries to the filter animate. If you remember the filter, when we clicked on the filter button, we would get a list of all the countries, and then we can select the country to animate. So I'm going to add that functionality here. So if we now click on filter, so we've got all our countries listed as well. Okay, so obviously it's not working right now, so we just have a list of countries and a checkbox against each. Okay, so the next bit will be to draw the circle. So that's our draw method. So within the draw method, we'll use another function called function update. And if you, this is where if you've seen some of my other videos, or if you look at the D3 documentation, I'm using the join method here to create the circles. So what we'll do is we'll pass 1 year at a time to the update function. and we'll use a set interval method for that. And the year is greater than or equal to 2013, we'll clear the interval and that'll stop the animation. If not, we'll keep passing 1 year at a time to the update function, and that is what will animate the circles. So if I console the year, we'll see that now we are passing 1 year at a time. We'll just refresh. You can see 1 year is being passed to the update method. So now all that's left for us to do is to create the circles. So we'll pass the data array, and then we'll use the join method with the enter, update, and exit methods within it. This makes it really easy to animate. So now all we have to do is just use the boilerplate D3 join method, and then we are passing 1 year at a time, and D3 will then animate those circles as the yearly data gets added to it. So it will remove the element, add a new circle. So for example, from 1963, we pass 1963, it'll print the circle based on 1963 data. Then we'll pass 1964, it will move the circle to 1964 and basically update the position CX and CY for the circle. Next, let's handle the dot click event. So every time we click a particular circle, we want to grab hold of the country data for that circle, for which we're using a dot filter method on the data array. And if I console that, and let's click on one of the circles. So when I click on the circle, we get the data for that particular country. And so we'll use this data to draw the path for the country. And for that, we'll create a new function called draw paths. So we'll pass the country data to the draw paths function. And that's one of the last functions we have to create. So within the draw paths function, we'll get hold of the subset data, which means that one country data or a group of countries data that we have just created, because we can click on we can click on multiple countries. And then we use the d3.line method to create the path. So I'll just go ahead and finish the code. I'll make the code available. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you.